Absolutely. Yeah, use your microphone.
Okay, this is not on the record. Yes, I had surgery yesterday. It was not the big spinal fusion. I was actually all prepped up. They'd started the sedation, all that, and then the orthopedic surgeon, who is so good, the anesthesiologist told me that he had chosen this surgeon to do surgery on his mother and on his wife. And he said, I've seen a lot of surgeons. This is the one I picked. So I was feeling all good about that. But he's so good. He's so good that actually here I was all ready to be wheeled into the operating room, and the sedation was started. And he and the neurologist did a final evaluation, and he said, I think we can do this another way, less invasive. Ta-ta. So not spinal fusion, which is why I'm able to walk in here today. But I am in a bad mood. Kidding. I'm kidding. So it's all good. Part of this was a result of months of intense physical therapy that had gotten me to the point where they could try something different.
So is that the final thing, what you've had done, you think?
Oh, hell no. There's knees, there's hips, there's...
Well, but your spine.
As far as I know. As far as I will, it'll remain to be seen. Okay, there.
No, we talk about medicine all the time. That's fine with me. Do you feel better?
No, I don't.
Okay, not yet. Okay, all right. Well, we're grateful that you're here, grateful that your surgery went well and that they were able to do a less invasive, as I've said, less sometimes is more. So grateful that you're here. Thank you. So we will call our City of Southport Board of Aldermen workshop and agenda review meeting to order, May 5th, 2023. Thank you for being here. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Today's also World Asthma Day. And I'd also like to mention that yesterday was International Firefighters Day. So I want us to think about our firefighters, and when we pray today, we will remember them in our prayers. I'll call on Reverend Alderman Lowe Davis for our invocation, and this will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Let us pray. Creator God, we thank you for all of your creations, most especially Southport, which today, on this beautiful day, we appreciate evermore. We understand that you have blessed our city. We call upon you today to guide us to make good and right decisions for the city, for its residents, for all who work here, and for our visitors. And we ask especially your blessings on our firefighters. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Davis. And Chief Drew, please extend our best wishes to your firefighters on International Firefighters Day yesterday, and wish you a very safe and productive year. So thank you. Item D is the approval of the agenda with one revision. We will remove the right-of-way discussion. Travis Henley couldn't be with us today, so we'll put that on another workshop. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with that revision. Alderman Allen?
Yes.
Yes.
So moved.
Second by Mr. Lombardi. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. That motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll start with, I will turn it over to our city manager for the introduction of the Code Enforcement Alliance.
Good morning. Yes, I think as everyone knows, we are need of a code enforcement person, and we have started the advertising this week. But meanwhile, what we've done is hired Alliance Code Enforcement, and they are a private entity. I'd never heard of a company that does this, but it's a brilliant idea. It really is. And they have been doing this for a number of municipalities across the state, where they come in and do the code enforcement. Chris will tell you a lot about the company and what their mission is and how they handle things. So I'm going to turn it over to him, but he's going to be helping us out. And since he's been here, which was yesterday or the day before you came, he's got 4 pages of code violations. It's like, oh boy. So, and that's only 4 hours. So I want to introduce Christopher Curry, like, you know, Steph Curry. Golden State Warriors won last night. Yoo-hoo! As you know, Chris, Lowe's a Steph Curry fan big time. So welcome, Chris.
Anyway, good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, my name is Christopher Curry. I am with Alliance Code Enforcement. I've been with the company for a long time. My background, just so you guys know, I worked with Guilford County Sheriff's Department as a sheriff deputy for almost 14 years. I got out in 2016. I got out with all the craziness that's going on in the world, or at that time, and decided to do something different. I went to school when I graduated high school to actually be a surgical tech, and I didn't do anything with it. My dad was a FBI agent for 16 years, and then a DEA for about 14 years, and he passed away last year, February 5th of last year. My background, well, my family's background, just so you guys know, I have 4 brothers. 2 of them are anesthesia. One is a nursing, well, he used to be an RM, but now he's a nurse anesthetist. And then my brother above me was an ER doctor, well, is an ER doctor. And then I wanted to be a veterinarian, but couldn't get in vet school. So I went the surgical tech route, then law enforcement. So anyway, so just wanted to share that with you guys. Brandon, which is the owner of Alliance Code Enforcement, I actually got him into code enforcement originally. We was working for a company, I was working for a company, and I just kind of introduced him to, you know, the ideal of, hey, why don't you come and work with me? I know you're trying to get out of law enforcement, you know, let's look at this. So he decided to look at it, then a company approached him, or a town approached him and said, hey, why don't you open your own company up? So he did, and then I ended up coming on board that way. So, so that's a little bit about me. There's a whole lot to talk about. I do have 4 kids, 3 that are biological, and then I have 1 that I adopted. One of my best friends passed away in a car accident, and his fiance was pregnant at the time, and from birth until now, I am that child's father. So I claimed that one as mine. So she calls me dad, I take care of daycare, and the mother and I have a pretty decent relationship, and she's moved on with her life with someone else, but I am the child's father, so so I just wanted to put that out there. I live in Greensboro, is where I live, a long ways away from here, but I love it here so far, and hopefully we'll get an apartment here, and hopefully we can maintain residence here, and hopefully continue to grow the East Coast, and hopefully I'll relocate at some point, I hope. I went around the town yesterday, and I just kind of flipped this around, and just to show you from a distance here. Okay. And then page 2.
What are these exactly?
And then another page, page 3.
They're right here.
So these are just a snapshot of the town. So what I did was I went around the town just looking at what are some violations that just stand out, that stick out like a sore thumb. And I put down 93 of them. It's on that page right in front of you at the bottom. 62 overgrown lots, 17 junk/nuisance vehicles. When it says 17, that means 17 properties. Some properties have multiple vehicles that are a nuisance. Okay? 38 junk piles/open storage, and then 20 minimum housing violations. Again, this is not the whole entire city. This was 4 hours of me just putting stuff together, riding around, and taking pictures, and just trying to put something together for today. So, Travis is not here, like you guys said at the top. We talked about right away. We just kind of put down some options, because we deal with this all the time in different municipalities. So my boss and I put something together. You guys can take a look at it. I know it's not on the agenda to talk about now, but if people ask me which do you recommend, if you ask me, I would say option number 2. But again, you guys make that decision. Those are hard decisions you guys have to make. So, but again, I know it's not on the agenda now to talk about. It's been taken off the agenda now. Going down to the bottom, it says proactive versus reactive. A search was completed on the ordinance of the UDO for word compliant. The 2 included items were the only things found pertaining to whether code enforcement may be done with more proactive approach versus complaint-based only. So, from my understanding is, and city manager, if you will, you can jump in if I'm saying it wrong, that everything must be complaint-driven. If you don't get a complaint about it, then it's out of sight, out of mind. You don't see it. You just drive past it. As long as the neighbors are not complaining about it, then just walk away, leave it alone. And we as a company, we are very proactive in what we do. We want to make a difference in your community immediately. And this time next year, we want to be here again. So, and the next year, and so on. So we take a different approach. Our approach is we will knock on your door. We will have conversation with you, let you know what the ordinance states, and what the violations are. And we try to have that personal one-on-one approach, that handshake, who I am, here's my card, here's the violation, here's what we can do to rectify it. And we're going to put you in violation for a notice of violation for this, and we're going to work with them on time. As long as they are moving towards abatement, and we give them 15 days to abate something, and they say, well, we'll have it done by next weekend, we're not going to hard press that. The town is not in the business of real estate or the lawn care business. So if that means give them an extra couple days to work with them, as long as they get it done, then that's what it's about. My boss and I mentioned something about fee schedule. I haven't seen the fee schedule, but some towns, people say, well, if it costs me $75 to mow the grass, well, for the town to do it, why not let the town do it? But again, I haven't seen the fee schedule. But in most towns that we work in, we try to adjust the fee schedule where it's out the gate is like a $250 administration fee. And then it goes on up from there. So now it's going to cost you $400 for us to come out and cut your grass, which should only cost you $50 or $60. So now they don't want the town to do it. So again, I haven't seen the fee schedule. I would love to see it at some point. And they may be looking at something to adjust if it's not already in line with that. So also going down to the second page, which is 2.5 enforcement, a complaint regarding violations. Whenever the UDO administrator receives a complaint, which may be anonymous, alleging a violation of the ordinance, he shall investigate the complaint, take whatever action is warranted, and inform the complainant what actions have been done or will be taken. The building inspector should be responsible for enforcement matters pertaining to the city and state building code. Our interpretation of this is it references zoning violation rather than a nuisance and or minimal housing violation. However, this language appears to allow anyone to complain, including the staff. So also going down what says complaint and investigation. The city manager, upon notice from any person of existence of any conditions described in section 9-36, shall calls be made by such investigation such as necessary to determine whether de facto conditions exist as to constitute the public nuisance as declared in section 9-36. Our interpretation of this is that the citizen complaint is not required. Rather, anyone, including code enforcement officials, may give a notice and take appropriate action. Ultimately, we interpret the above language would allow for us to take a more proactive enforcement approach rather than a reactive. So, we want to know from you guys, this is you guys' ordinance. This is the way you guys wrote it. This is the way we interpret it. You guys hired us to come in and do a job, and we want to do that job and not be sitting on the porch tied up on with a leash. You want to release us, let us do our job, and let us help clean this place back up and get it back where it get to a place where we can just maintain it and it becomes a maintenance versus these ongoing issues. So that's all that's all we have to say here. We just wanted to hear from you guys to make sure you guys give us the green light to enforce your ordinance that you guys wrote and have a more proactive approach versus a reactive approach.
One of the things I had said to Chris when we met yesterday was they know best practices in this state and what's going to work and what isn't, so if they could help us rewrite some of these ordinances and help us with the right-of-way decision. But I've never been in a community where it's complaint-driven. It's just the way Chris is talking. He's out there, he sees it, he does it, and that's the way we should be, not just sitting back, waiting for somebody to call us, because there's a lot in this city that needs to be taken care of.
And I'm just going to add to it. Last time what you guys do is ride around this town and you say, well, what is code enforcement doing? What is he doing? What is she doing? They ain't doing anything. We don't see them doing anything. It still looks the same. Well, if we take this proactive approach, you will see a difference immediately. And we just ask that you guys have our backs. Because somebody's going to call you because they know that council member. Y'all rub elbows together. Y'all play golf together. Y'all drink coffee together. One of them cleans the shoes once a week, shining your shoes. We don't know anybody here. And we ask that you guys just allow us to do our job that you guys hired us for and let us help turn this town around. That's all we ask for. We don't discriminate. So I tell people in towns that we're in 23 municipalities currently, and we just brought on, I think, 4 more municipalities in the last 24 hours, well, in the last 48 hours, and we got several contracts starting July 1st. I tell everybody, you guys represent this town. You guys have a hard job. You guys help write these ordinances. And everybody I'm looking at right now, your property should be subpar compared to your neighbor right beside you. That's just my opinion.
One of my questions to you is this.
Yes, sir.
You're interpreting this statute in most favorable light to get something done. I think it's, and this is not for you to do, this is for us to do. If we want you to do this, we need to change the statute ASAP. And this is not something we can put on for the next 14 months and dibble-dabble, because we're putting you in a difficult spot if somebody else in the judicial world decides that that's not what the statute says. So it should be very clear.
Correct.
Now for a more technical thing, what's overgrown? Is there a definition?
So you guys' ordinance states 8 inches as
Is
far
that-
as the
okay.
height. So
Is
we don't
that
have
is
to
that
get
the
out-
standard for the municipalities that you have?
Most municipalities is 12 inches
Okay.
in most municipalities. Yes, sir.
So if we were to go through this whole process, as I understood the manager, you would help us with the current rules. Some of them are statutes, some of them are policies. Policies we can change tomorrow.
Correct.
You would help us know what the best practices are throughout the state as a general rule. There's going to be differences. Some are probably going to have like 1 inch, and somebody's going to have 12. Most people are going to have 12 inches, if that's what you're telling me.
Yes, sir.
But you'd be able to help us do that before we go full bore, and then we have to communicate that to the world, that there's a new sheriff in town, and these are the rules.
Correct.
So,
Do you guys have a newsletter that you put out?
oh yeah.
Yeah, so
We can do all of that stuff, but I think there's a little prep work before we actually let you go.
In fact, we talked about that yesterday, that we have got to do some PR and education of what's going to happen, because it's going to be totally different. And so the citizens and businesses need to know that, so we'll work on it. He knows how to do it.
What are we looking at doing, what are we looking at doing right now?
I think we've got them scheduled to start up, well, he already has started, hasn't he? Next week. And then we're going to work on policies that we can get to you as quickly as possible. At the same time, you know, he's not going to go door to door right now. I mean, he's going to make sure he's working with Travis and Dory and I, because you don't want to go gung-ho into this out of the blue without, like I said, the PR and the education. So we're going to take it slowly, but at the same time get something to you as soon as possible to review for changes so we can start the enforcement. So,
You feel like you have enough within our existing ordinance language to actually start enforcing, issuing violations, and that you have enough backup within the ordinance to do enforcement?
Correct, we do. However, you could add one thing to the ordinance and says, instead of saying building inspector or city manager, it could say building inspector, city manager, code enforcement official, because we represent the town. So you can put one word in there and boom, it's done. It just needs to be very clear, like Councilmember Alt just mentioned.
We thinking that we might want a workshop specifically on code enforcement and both the zoning and nuisance, et cetera, violations.
We should have a public hearing about it, for
yeah,
sure.
and also, you know, because right away, we've been talking about that, that needs to start moving, and that's very connected to what he's going to be doing, so we should combine them and get them both going.
I'm struggling to understand why we keep educating people on stuff that's existed for a very long time.
Right, go ahead, John.
But at some point, you've got to make it,
Enforced it.
that's not our problem, that's staff's problem.
Oh,
Staff
That's our
keeps-
problem.
we have
It becomes
that
our problem.
responsibility.
Staff keeps coming to us, asking us, what direction? There's already direction, there's already policy. At least there's language that says these things shouldn't happen. I don't know, it just keeps, and there's nothing, I don't mean anything,
No, no, no.
you know, you're inherited a lot of crap, but
But what I was going to say is, you know, when I got here, it said complaint-driven. So at any time, if I said, which I typically would to a zoning person, hey, I noticed on the way in, there was, I think the minimum housing here is horrendous issue, horrendous, and it's never been addressed. And so all of a sudden, you start going in, you know, gang-ho. Hey, guess what? We're going to take that down, take that down, take that. I think it's going to be a revelation, and I know what you're saying, it's been on the books, but if we haven't, shame on us, done the education to that point, then, you know, we need to change that. For example, the symposium that just happened last month, it was stressed that it's complaint-driven during that symposium. So here's going to be a whole different way, and that we're now going to do it, so I think you just give people a chance to understand the new sheriff and the new way we're going to be doing it.
Let me explain
so.
the process real quick on just a couple things so you guys have more of an idea of the process. In these summer months, as far as grass, we'll send out a notice of violation. We'll put on there 15 days to bring the property to an abatement. If they don't, then at that point, we will submit a work order to have Public Works to cut it or a third-party company of your choice. We can search out and find a third-party company that will be on standby and just let them know, hey, you know, you could get more jobs and give us the best rate possible. And at that point, we got Public Works in place, and we also have a third party in place. You may get one job this week, you may get 25 jobs next week. The point is, we try to get the best rate possible, so we have someone on standby so Public Works is not overwhelmed, or Public Service, I think. Okay. If it's a nuisance of a vehicle, junk pile, which means open storage, we send out a notice of violation, we put 15 days on it. If they don't bring it to an abatement within 15 days, then we will serve them with a notice of hearing. A notice of hearing, we will send it to them regular mail, certified mail, and we will post the property. So we'll go out and post the property, take pictures of it. You guys will have access to our shared folder at any given time, and you guys can look in there and see exactly what we're doing, see the pictures we've taken, and the process of that property. So if you say, well, what's going on with 1101, whatever this main street is, we're still learning these streets, right beside Town Hall. What's going on with 1101? Well, just click on the shared folder. You'll be able to see it and read the notes that we put in there in reference to that property. Instead of sending an email to Travis or Miss Dory and say, what's going on with 1101? It's a shared folder, it's a shared link. You just click on it and look at it, and you can read our notes. And it's in real time. So when we update it and hit submit, you see it as soon as we hit submit. So it's real time.
That sounds like education to me. That sounds like, because it's not, you have to fix it tomorrow. You've got time, and people don't know. We can educate them all day long, but it doesn't mean they're going to fully understand where their violations are.
So once we do the notice of hearing, that's where they come to Town Hall. They have a conversation with me, more like a court setting. Obviously, we're not elected officials or appointed. But they come before me, and they'll basically sit at the table at the conference room table. We'll have a conversation about their particular property. I treat it just like as they went to a regular court. I treat it the same. We open this case up on such and such date in reference to XYZ. This is the time frame you had to get it done. You didn't. And then we hit you with a notice of hearing. Housing code, as far as housing code official in North Carolina says, 10 days after the 15 days and within 30 days, we can hold a notice of hearing. We don't want to remove anything off anyone's property without conducting the hearing first. So once we conduct the hearing, if they show up, they don't show up, it doesn't matter. Then at that point, I said, well, how long is it going to take you, Mr. Jones, to get that property cleaned up? Oh, it's going to probably take me, just get me through the weekend. How about 10 days? Would 10 days help you out? Man, that'd be great, because you're calling for rain this weekend. Let's just give you 10 days to get it done. You know, I'll work with you on the time. As long as I see you making progress, I'm willing to work with you. But you got to show me something. And as long as they're making progress, it's done. But if they fail to comply, at that point, it's a work order, and then it's enforcement action. And then it's a lien on the property. And then at that point, we can take that lien however far you guys want to take it. We've demolished houses, we've burned houses down, we've taken properties. Those are things that we do on a regular basis.
I want to say one thing. We have people in this community who have received violations, and they literally cannot afford to do anything about it. And, I mean, they've contacted me. And what do when we have our discussions about what we're doing, we need to think about that. If we take it purely as law enforcement and get down to the point of slapping a lien on their property, what are we prepared to do to help them comply? And there are going to be plenty of people who need help.
Well, I mentioned a couple things to you that we've done as a company. And again, this is a new town for us. We don't know anybody here, which is good, because I don't know your addresses. So, unless you're on this list right here, okay? So, there's a bike group called the Buffalo Soldiers back in Liberty, North Carolina. Ms. Dora might be familiar with that area since she's from up there. And they're a bike group. They're not a rowdy bike group that goes out and starts crimes and create chaos. But they're a group that goes out and they do a lot of charity. And we have a relationship with that bike group that way. But people in that same situation that can't get out there and cut their grass, can't get out there and move all that junk and debris. And I contact Mr. Ricky, who was the head person of that bike group. And he had over 50 or 60 bike riders out there, bikes lined up around the property, pulling all that stuff to the road. And then I was able to talk to the town manager or the city manager and say, hey, would the town be willing to pick this stuff up at no cost to this young lady? Because she is 73 years old, and she's by herself and she's a widow, and all her siblings have passed away, or her son lives out of town 3 hours away. So we've done that. Also, there's a back home in Green Level, Sedalia, and other places, we have landscaping companies that we have a relationship with. They'll go out and actually cut the grass at no cost to the property owner, but they just have them to sign off on the receipt at no charge. And it's a tax write-off for them. So those are the relationships we try to build when we go into communities. I don't know anyone here. I don't even know where to start. But at some point, I will reach out to someone. I will run across somebody cutting grass in the neighborhood. When you see the trailer pulled on the side of the road, they cutting the grass and they've been contracted. I'll stop and hand off a card and say, hey, do you do X, Y, Z? Would you be willing to do X, Y, Z? Some will, some won't. So what next? We just move on to the next one. Somebody's going to do it. Somebody wants that opportunity with the town and the partnership with the town. So why would you not?
If I can just add to that, I think our faith community would probably be very helpful in that, and not to put our fire chief on the in the spotlight too much right now because he didn't come discuss this, but I'm sure he could probably help us locate, various churches that have men's groups or whatever. And I know they already exist, and maybe we could have them, enlist them to help in some of those situations as well.
And I just mentioned one
We
last.
have so many volunteers in this city, and I think beautification would be number one that would help somebody out that was in trouble. So I'm really glad to see this happening. It's been a long time coming, and I think we should look ahead and not back at what's happened in the past. Let's look ahead and start anew, and we'll figure out a way to help people who can't do it, because I think that's what has stopped a lot of it. You have all these rules and regulations and nothing has been done because a lot of people can't afford it. But I think we have enough volunteers as the beautification committee that would certainly help.
Right.
The due process that you just talked about, those dates, those timelines and stuff, probably should know this, but I don't. Is that built into our policies, or are you using the state rules and regulations?
So the state rules is anything that's a nuisance, we're required to give them 10 days to bring that property to
So
a
I'm not, I'm ignorant of this. I'm not sure if we have that written into ours to back you up to do that. So that's something else we'd have to put on there. And to make sure that we're clear on this, because there's another jurisdiction that a private entity is also the due process, but when they're found guilty, the due processor gets a cut of the money. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands that you're paid a fee, and that regardless of what happens with the thing, you're not getting extra money because you found them guilty.
No. So here's
I knew that was the answer, but I wanted to make sure it was clear,
Gotcha.
because there's been a lot of tears and yelling and screaming about this other jurisdiction that allows a due process to go through the third party, which then gets a cut of everything they find you guilty of. Okay.
So the third party is your North Carolina education. That's your third party. So if the town goes in and abates some property or what have you, if you have a fee schedule in place, the fee schedule money goes to the town. If we place a lien on the property, that money goes towards the Board of Education. So
I
the
just want to
fee
make sure
schedule-
we're clear. I want to make sure we're clear on that when
Right.
we're having this open discussion.
Right.
Thank you.
No problem. Some may not know, but it's, if you have a fee schedule in place, that money goes to the town. But if you place a lien on the property, don't have a fee schedule in place, then it goes to the Board of Education. So,
Also, practically, how do y'all operate? Are you going to be here 2 days a week, or what is sort of the logistics, since you have several communities?
no problem. So it's 24 hours. So we obviously have to have time to take pictures, create case files, type up notes, send out notice of violations. So out of the 24 hours, so say 3 days, say Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you'll physically see me here Wednesday, Thursday. On Friday, I may be here half a day, and then I'm gone. I'll spend the other half of my day remotely, whether I'm doing a remote from the hotel, remote from my house, remote from the office here. So that's the way it would be, basically, 24 hours. But, we have to put in about 5 or 6 hours to type up notes, case file notes, and to prepare the shared folder that you guys are going to see, because I'm pretty sure y'all going to be clicking on it, and if you don't see nothing in there, you're going to be like, what is this guy doing? So, but yeah, so Wednesday, Thursday on normal, and then probably leave out on a Friday. So I'll be here Wednesday, Thursday, half a day Friday, and then I'm 3.5, 4 hours back up the road until I find an apartment here. So if you guys know anybody with apartments or that's in a decent neighborhood, let us know. So it'll save us money on hotels versus we can just pay, less than $2,000 a month on
just, just so everybody knows too, if people want to make a complaint, we're still going to have them. If they want, call us, because I think you still need that city person that they can reach out to. But really the way they should be going is right through their website. We're going to post it on our website, so people know they just click this link. It's going to bring it right to them. They fill it out right on the website. But again, it's going to be all on the PR we're going to release.
So Chris is going to be handling complaints, and they're going to be handling everything else.
No, they're doing everything.
What's Chris?
Chris went back to physical services working.
To the department he came
Hold on, let
from
me do what I already have.
for us. So,
Are anonymous for complaints at this point, and that's not changing at this point, or ever, I hope.
Yeah, we would never put anyone out there and say, we will always say it's self-initiated. We would never put anyone in harm's way. Same thing if you gave the PD information on a crime or robbery or whatever, they're not gonna say, well, you know, your next door neighbor told me you did it. You know, I hope they wouldn't do that. I don't think they would, but.
in Southport, they'll figure it out pretty much quickly, so it's okay. But anyway, in terms of one of the documents that I read, and I think we should bring it up, is the public relations campaign, whether it's code enforcement right away. I think that's a key part of it that y'all previously mentioned, and I think that will be very important. I agree with all the aldermen who mentioned that, and it was in their document, and it was concerning the right-of-ways, and it could certainly carry over to the code enforcement. And it's, I know the sort of euphemism, new sheriff in town, and you could say that, but I mean, code enforcement is going to be more robust now. I mean, we're actually looking at the ordinance, looking at the codes, and we'll be revising them, making them more appropriate, and we'll just be enforcing. There's a home, I don't know if you saw it and I know you don't know the town, but it's on the corner of,
Brown?
the houses on Brown look pretty good on Owens. I was thinking of East Owens. There's a home there that's caving in, East
On the
Owens and
backside?
Atlantic, on the corner of East Owens and Atlantic. The grass is growing up, and that house has been there for, Miss Edna Nepshield used to live there, and there are about 11 heirs supposedly to it. The home is just caving in, there are rodents and everything else living there.
There's a White
and-
House on the corner, the back end's caved in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's
on my list here.
been there for a couple, I figured you probably had seen, it was a pretty easy one to spot. And so, that's pretty egregious. And, those that need help, absolutely. Although the city manager, I think you sent out a document that said the average home in Southport was $425,000.
Right, with reval, yes.
Yeah. So, I don't think there are a lot of people that need it, but those that do need it, yes, absolutely. We'll, God bless him, if Jody was feeling better, we'd send him over there to cut that grass. So we want to help our citizens. But yes, it's time for code enforcement to get where it should be. And it's not a police action. It's a way to beautify, like Mr. Lombardi said, beautify our city. I agree with all the aldermen in their excellent discussion, and I'm grateful that you're here, and your life story is certainly compelling. I appreciate you sharing that with us also.
And just one more thing, I'll be the main face here representing the company. However, when I'm on vacation or not in place, we'll have someone to step in. All of us that work with our company are all prior law enforcement, prior LEOs / military or both. So we all have a different approach to the way we deal with people as far as de-escalation and so on. So you will have that person come in all hot-headed every now and then, but it's hard de-escalating everybody, but we do a pretty good job at it. So main thing we ask for is your support. We ask that you have our back. And when Bob is in violation that you rub elbows with because y'all play golf together, just have our back too. That's all we ask for.
Questions or discussion?
I just wanted to add that our ordinance does give time periods for different things already, so.
never enforced anything. I didn't read that part, thanks.
Yes.
There's a notice of violation in 15 days. After 15 days, we post the property notice of hearing. That's where they come in and have a conversation with us. At this point, you're right around that 30-day window at this point, 32, 33 days. And then if they still don't comply, then we'll post that vehicle or those vehicles with a tow notice, a 7-day tow notice. And then usually when we hit them with a notice of hearing, they say, okay, they're not playing around. And usually you'll start seeing compliance. But if it hasn't been enforced and no one's really cracked the whip, then they will test it, notice of violation, and not do anything. But trust me, when they get that notice of hearing posted on that property, abatement action will take place.
Do we ever get to the point that we, the city, tow the vehicle away?
So if you get to a point where you tow the vehicle away, I don't know who you guys use currently as far as a tow company, but what we do is we set up in communities, not communities, in municipalities with a tow company where we call them, we give them a certain list of names who can actually call in a tow. So for example, to be my name, say Ms. Dory, whoever's name you want on that list, so we give them a code. Say the code is 1099. So what's your name? Chris Curry. What's the code? 1099. And then they'll come and pick that vehicle up. They're not going to charge the town anything, but when that person goes to retrieve their vehicle, that's where they make their money.
But the vehicle is usually a junked vehicle, and they're not going to come and get the vehicle. So my question is, I don't know how they do it in the state.
Once they have a contract with the town,
Uh-huh.
when we call them, they come in to get it.
Yeah, but they'll come and get the car and they'll move it away. But when they go back to the owner and say, if you want your car back, it'll cost you this much. So there's a tow fee, then there's a daily storage fee, and yada, yada, yada. As you get into that, and at the end of the day, the guy says, keep the car, I don't want it. Then is there paperwork or policies or code sections that we have to put in place before we do all of that
So
to make sure that somehow it gets disposed of?
Got you. So we'll post the vehicle with a tow notice, and then we'll send them a post tow notice letting them know where the vehicle's located. So when we send a post tow notice, we're regular mail, certified mail, and posting the property again. When the tow company gets the vehicle, I think it's 10 days if I'm not mistaken. After 10 days, the tow company can then dispose of that vehicle, salvage that vehicle, or apply for a title through North Carolina DMV. It's called an addendum bond on that vehicle, and after 15 days, they can file for a title for that vehicle. But at that point, it's up to the tow company at that point. If the tow company wants to go after the property owner, then it becomes a civil issue between the tow company and the property owner, not the town.
Okay, good. I'm assuming that the first 25 cars you tow out of here, the owner's not never going to want them. I just trying to make sure that our paperwork, whatever that is, code, policy, yada, yada, mirrors what you just said.
Right.
Seems to me that you probably already have experienced every scenario we can think up.
Probably. And when the person gets the car towed, they know it's going to get towed. It ain't just by surprise. They just look out the window and see the car going down the road. They've had a notice of violation. They probably talked to me a couple times. They probably cussed me out in their front yard. They probably have berated me at their front door. They got a notice of hearing. They didn't show up for the hearing. We have a hearing form. We fill out whether they show up or not. And we go above and beyond to make sure we cover every base to protect us as a company and also protect the town. And then the last I mentioned is the minimum housing. Minimum housing, North Carolina General Statute says that you don't even have to send them a notice of violation. All you have to do is conduct a hearing. We send them a notice of violation, give them 30 days to bring the property to an abatement, which is what we don't have to do, but that's one extra step that we take that the state doesn't require us to do. And then we hit them with a notice of hearing. And then after notice of hearing, and then as long as they're making abatement progress, we're always going to work with them. We don't want to use town money to do anything for us demolition, for our demo work. So as long as they're making progress and they bring the property to the minimum standard, then that's what we look for. So we're I don't know, we're not, I don't even know the appropriate word, but we're very calm and very professional at what we do. And we have a way of talking to people to hopefully make them comply without any enforcement action. So we just let people know we care. And you probably heard this before. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. We try to show people that we care. And when we represent this town, we're showing them that the town cares too. That's why we're here. So,
Exactly, yeah, you have to. I
y'all
think
want to
it's,
look at this list before I go?
no, no.
Anyway, if you guys don't have anything else, we appreciate the opportunity, and we hope this is something that will not just be here today and tomorrow. We'll be here this time next year and so on in the future. So,
Thank you very much, Chris. Excellent, excellent presentation.
thank you, sir.
Okay, next item will be on our agenda, item 3, amendments to Chapter 2 and Chapter 13, boards, committees, and commissions. I think this is a great thing. We're trying to get all of our boards and the way we do the appointments, way we do the interviews and that type thing to try to standardize it. And I believe I'll call on Assistant City Manager Dorothy Dutton.
Okie dokie. So, last meeting when we brought this to you, there were some recommendations that you made. I went back and made all of those recommendations. For instance, I stated that in the absence of the director, the assistant director shall attend the meeting for Parks and Rec. New applicants will be interviewed by the chair, vice chair, and board of aldermen liaisons unless one of those folks is the one being interviewed, in which case the mayor would serve on the interview committee. So I went back through every section and made those changes. The only thing that Randy and I were just discussing today was the beautification committee. We've changed the staggered term expirations so that 4 of the city residents will expire this year instead of 2024. I'm happy to answer any
Any-
questions you have.
Yeah, any questions for the Assistant City Manager?
I do, just one quick thing. First of all, this is a lot of work. Thank you so much for doing it. For the ABC Board, since you are the liaison as well, what happens when you're not there? Can we put in that the Mayor Pro Tem fills in if you're unable? Just to fill that
Absolutely.
potential gap.
Sure,
Everything else looked good.
Sure, I could add that. I won't be at the board meeting next week, but I'll have it ready for you, and Randy will be there if you have any other questions, but I'll be happy to make that change in the meantime.
There's also throughout there's just, and this is just housekeeping, where it says alderman and aldermen throughout is not consistent,
Okay.
number one. And then on page 15, you're talking about historic preservation. There is no ETJ member on the Historic Preservation Committee. It's in the 3rd paragraph. I think you're probably just cutting and pasting.
Yeah.
You have to be within the corporate limits, so there
That's
is
right.
no ETJ member
Okay.
there. And then I guess my question was overall, did we want to just try to update this committee conversation? But because I think the whole, not all of the individual committee ordinance includes the appointment of the liaison by the mayor and that those conversations. I didn't know, like at Parks and Recs, I did not see in it where it showed the appointment, whereas one of the other ones did, kind of thing.
That's possibly because I had to piecemeal them from the bylaws of each committee into the ordinance. So I'm happy to make sure that
But I
that
think
statement-
that is our practice.
Yeah.
So it should be codified, I would
Sure.
think, in this ordinance. Yes, sir. Let me find one. Hold on. As an example, under beautification, the mayor shall appoint an alderman to the committee to act as liaison between Beautification Committee and the Board of Aldermen. There were a lot, you know. That's not in every
Not in
one,
every one of
correct.
them.
And then it also says, like in the bylaws, in addition to that, it would say, and I don't have the exact language, but if you go to the bylaws for forestry and for beautification, it says that the liaison will have this, participate, but will not be a voting member. There's that language, and that needs to be in each one. It's in the Historic Commission one, because that's been recently done. Anyway, just some things like that to make
Everything the same.
everything, make
Sure.
sure, since we are updating the ordinance, it would seem to me that we'd want to
Yes.
kind of be clear as we can be, because this has all been piecemealed over a lot of years, separate from each other, so.
Yeah, I'm happy to make those, make sure that everything, all the language is in there. I'll get that redrafted and sent it out probably today.
Thank you.
Further questions or discussion? That was a great deal of work. Thank y'all for standardizing this so we won't have any gray areas on who needs to be there at an interview or when is someone's term up or that type thing. All right, item 4, review of the May 11th, 2023 agenda.
I've got just a question about one item. How do y'all want to do it?
We'll just,
Can I just
start at the top and,
Okay.
not literally, but with item F, we know we see the consent agenda. Any problems with that? It's just the approval of the minutes of the previous board meetings. And then item G is special recognition, and May has many opportunities, and we thought obviously our police are so important to us, as are all our first responders, so we'll be doing that. Military Appreciation Month, National Nurses Week, and of course Hurricane Preparedness, because we have our Hurricane Expo May 22nd, right, Chief? 5 o'clock, community building. Okay, so we'll be proclaiming that. And then on the agenda, City Manager, if you want to start with that, item 1.
I just thought I would redo the presentation I did here at the workshop, just in case people hadn't seen it. I mean, it's going to be still my budget, because you guys are still deliberating, which I'll say, but I just thought it would be a good time to get it out to more people.
And then item 2 is the recommendation for contractors for dangerous trees, hanging limbs. That should be straightforward. Is that correct, Assistant Manager?
We have to select contractors to go out for bids every 2 years, and we have Barry Johnson that's helped us with that, and a lot of other things actually. But he went through the process with our engineer and public services director. They accepted the bids, reviewed them. He did a bid tabulation, and then he's making his recommendations to the board now.
Okay.
And we have to have a primary and a secondary for each topic.
Okay, that's item 2 and 3. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a quick question. In the contract, do we give them guidance as to how high the lowest branch can be that's hanging over a road? Because a truck just took one down on, I guess it's Dry Street, knocked that whole live oak, took the whole part of the live oak tree off.
Right, I'm not sure. This is only for storms.
Oh, this is debris removal for
This
the
is
storm.
only
I'm
for
sorry.
debris for like emergencies.
I thought it was for just general maintenance. I
No.
apologize.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then item 4, audit. City Manager?
Yes, it was time to do requests for qualifications for auditing firms, so there were 3 that submitted, and for the first time, we interviewed them, which surprised me. So Brandon and Melanie and I interviewed them, and I'd like to recommend the Sharp Company. They were really, really good, and I really liked the first firm that we interviewed, but then when we got to him, I think the thing that impressed me was, one of my questions was that the elected officials in every town I've ever been in go glassy when the audit comes up. They have no clue how to read it. They have no clue even to ask questions. And he answered with every single town I've ever been in, I go and I educate them on how to read and make it user-friendly. And I went, oh boy, that's my man. So that's why I wanted to recommend him, because I know it's very hard to read those documents and understand them. So he wants to come in, if he is selected, and do that training for you guys. So that would be my recommendation.
Excellent. And then item 5, again, City Manager, if you'd like to speak on that. Off-duty management of police, fire, EMS departments.
Yeah, we talked about this at your last workshop. We've had a lot of requests for private duty for the fire and police officers. And we thought it would be great to formalize it with what the hourly rate would be, as well as hiring this off-duty management company. They will be there in attendance in case you have questions, but who would handle everything. That would be that the vendors would call them, they would get the staff member to go and work, they would bill them, they would take care of paying them. So, I mean, I think it's a win-win. And we certainly have the 2 chiefs and the major here in case you have questions, but it's something that really should have been formalized a long time ago, because right now we're paying the vendor is paying them over the table, and that shouldn't be the way we're doing it. So this would formalize the process. And I do have the rates in there, taking the rates that you guys had recommended at the workshop and put them in there. So if you have questions, we'll be glad to answer them while we're all here.
Thank you. And then items 6, 7, and 8, these are development planning issues. Oakton preliminary plat, Prices Creek, and Osprey Landing. Maureen?
Good morning. I am here to answer any questions you may have. We'll be doing the Oakton preliminary plat. As you know, that is the subdivision with 42 lots between Fodale and Stewart Avenues, approximately 20 acres. Does have a connection with the hammock. So if you have any questions about that or anything you would like us to, I know that there were some questions about some of the landscaping and the tree mitigation that we'll have ready for the meeting as well.
What are our options?
Since it's a legislative, or not a legislative, it's administrative, so that if it meets the UDO, all the minimum criteria for the UDO, then the board must recommend approval. You can table it, or you can recommend denial, but if you recommend denial, you have to give very specific reasons from the UDO where it does not meet those standards.
For Oakton, did we ever decide whether or not the city owns the hammock roads?
They do not yet own this.
So they cannot connect into that?
I would have to ask the attorney on that one. I don't know that
Well,
answer.
before we get there,
Yeah, we forwarded on to him. We're just
Okay.
waiting to hear back from Brady.
yeah, I don't know how we connect into a road that we don't own.
I mean, they are supposed to be turned over to the city. They haven't been able to find the
Yeah, I
contract.
mean, if they were built as dedicated public streets to be turned over to the city, then we can go ahead and connect to them. I mean, it's
But-
not, just the fact that it hasn't happened yet doesn't matter.
Really?
Yes.
Question on Oakton. I know there's a petition going around with 100 signatures about not having an entrance or an exit on
Stewart.
Stewart. Has that been addressed at all?
I have not seen or heard of this petition myself.
I struggle with that, because we already have like speed humps all the way down Stewart. There's already tons of traffic coming in and off of Stewart. Stewart's a cut through, and now we're going to dump more traffic onto it or cause more traffic. That is an entrance, I understand, but it's going to cause traffic to come into it.
Cause people to use Stewart more.
That's a one-way now. Is it going in or coming out?
Going in. It'll
Going
be
in.
entrance only.
I've looked at this plan real close, and as we can all see, they've got 4 ways to go in and 3 ways to go out, and that seems in excess. And I kind of tried to figure out, if you lived right up there by what is currently designed as an entrance off of Stewart, if that were denied to you, how bad would it be to have to go down past 6 or 7 houses and get out on Fodale? And I think that might be 50 seconds or 45 seconds. So that's an objection I have, and I'm trying to articulate that Thursday night, if we get to that point, in ways that will meet the standard of this is not good for the welfare of the community. My other objection is what they're doing with the trees. This is essentially a clear-cutting operation. And it was explained last time that they had to do that to handle the drainage. Surely there are other ways to do that. And this is a fraught drainage area anyway. But to have to basically do a lot of earth moving, the kind of earth moving that would kill all the trees anyway, so they're just going to take out all the trees. You know, trees help with drainage. So those are my observations. We'll hear them again on Thursday night.
Mo, will our engineer has looked at this?
Correct. Yes.
And so will they be there at the meeting to
I will
kind
ask
of,
him to be there, yes.
so that can clarify, because I'm not an engineer.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
So Mo, I have a question. If this is a administrative approval, so if it meets the UDO, it basically has to be approved. So the UDO calls for a subdivision to have 2 forms of ingress and egress, correct?
Yes.
So if they have more than that,
It exceeds those standards.
so that's not a reason. If it's less, you can deny it, but the fact that they have more is not a reason to deny.
Correct.
The UDO requires them to have 2 forms of ingress. If they had 1, then obviously we'd turn it down. Nope, doesn't meet the UDO. But if they have 3, they can have 3. It's not a reason to deny.
So you don't like the entrance off of Stewart? Is that part of that conversation? Because I don't like the entrance off of Stewart. Okay.
Unnecessary. It would be for the convenience of the people who will eventually be residents of the subdivision, and it is really a detriment to everybody who is already a resident of Stewart.
In order to do that, they would have to create a cul-de-sac or a T or something. There's whatever that would change that whole area.
They may lose a lot.
I think Chief Drew would like to speak about this too.
It is, they're cutting through an area that they own.
You're not going to want to hear
Yeah.
what I have to say about it. But Alderman Davis said 50 seconds doesn't matter, but it does when you have an emergency and you're trying to get an ambulance to a house. You've got to think about emergency access to the people that are going to be living in that community, in that subdivision. We've got to be able to get in and out of that subdivision easily to be able to access those residents that may be having an emergency. And that's one thing that you've got to look at with these entrances and these ingress and egresses. You've got to look at interconnectivity to be able to get emergency equipment in there in case somebody's having an emergency.
So, Chief, if you don't mind, you're in favor of that entrance off of Stewart?
I'm not necessarily in favor of the entrance off of Stewart, but, and I guess this is the map, but we've reviewed it along through the technical review processes and stuff with the fire marshal's office and with my office. And I mean, if you eliminate that entrance off of Stewart, you've got a long distance that you're going to have to come off of Fodale to be able to access houses that are going to be right there close to Stewart Avenue. So it's going to make a difference in response times. So I don't know the reason why they were dumping traffic onto Stewart unless it was for emergency access. I mean, I didn't ask that question, but I didn't realize there was going to be an issue with the ingress off of Stewart Avenue.
So Chief, what's the difference between this development of 42 residences and the landing, which has a one-way out?
Well, the difference is we didn't have regulations that made them have more than one way
Well
at that point.
well played.
But we do. Yeah, and the same thing for Indigo.
Right, okay.
But we learned from our mistakes.
So how do we find language that would support a denial because of this entrance? Maybe that's an inappropriate question.
Sure, that's her. I don't know. Yeah. And just to back up just a little bit, so now we kind of sort of dovetails about these entrances, why there's not one at the landing, not two entrances, sort of like code enforcement, you know? I mean, these things change. Whether it was there and it wasn't enforced or it just wasn't there. So now the fact that it's required, and Chief, you're right, so response times matter, and it is to get in, not necessarily get out. And again, none of us want more traffic on poor Stewart Avenue, right? I mean, they've got enough. You're right, Alderman Carroll. It is like a freeway going to the ferry and that type thing. But if it's a safety issue or public health issue and it's been reviewed by staff, I mean, that's our fire and police and EMS. I mean, so if there's another way to look to deny it, you'll all have to put your collective heads together separately, of course, and find a way to see if we can, if there's a way, you know, not meeting, to see if we can get some relief to Stewart Avenue.
The infamous Osprey Landing debates that ended up with Maple Leaf being their secondary, but it is, as I understand, only for emergencies. And Chief Drew, do you have a code or something that lets you in, but it is not an open access to general public?
If I remember correctly about that, there's going to be a gate there that will be activated if an emergency vehicle goes up there and turns a siren on, it will open automatically. And that's normally what, you know, the process is. So you don't have to stop and punch a code in or anything. It would be activated by the siren to be able to let emergency traffic in.
That's a whole different story about all of that. The builder agreed to do a gate there rather than being a full-on connection. So that's really, they didn't really have another connection. They had that easement existed for that property to be able to connect.
Developer actually owns the property where that would be the access road into Oakton off of Stewart. So easement or ownership, we would be within our rights to require that this be only for emergency vehicles.
Would it be appropriate to ask staff to talk to the applicant about the possibility of that ingress being for emergency vehicles only?
I would be happy to ask. I know that they have told us many times that they have trying to work with the community with allowing it just be an entrance only, that since they do own the rights to this property, but I'd be happy to ask them and have them address that on Thursday.
And they are building sidewalks along with that. To Stewart.
Would all the trees have to be cut if it was just an entrance? Why are they, or is that part of the drainage? Do you know?
I am not sure. I have to look. I believe it's just because it's within the infrastructure itself.
Not-
That could be, I mean, we can ask the
Yeah,
applicant.
it's not because of
absolutely.
the entrance, yeah.
What, that's, yes, agreed.
All right. If no further questions on Oakton, we'll go to Price's Creek Townhomes.
Is phase 2 of, this is the townhome portion of phase 2 of the Prices Creek planned development. It is connected between Jabbertown Road and Firefly Lane within the Prices Creek cottages. It's 48 units. They're quadruplexes, so they are townhomes. Approximately 17 acres with 4 acres of open space, not including the wetlands, so it's all upland open space. And again, I'll take any questions you may have on that.
Basically, like a continuation of the development that's already there.
Yes, correct. But instead of single-family homes, it'll be townhomes, yes.
Any questions? Okay. And then we'll go to item 8, Osprey Landing Phase 1 and 2, final plat. Oh,
Question about the Prices
sure.
Creek townhomes, because that public street doesn't have a cul-de-sac or anything at the end of it. What does it connect to?
It has a T, and it'll eventually connect to the Phase 3 that when it comes through, because the Phase
Okay.
3 will be on the other side of that.
Okay. Here.
And it has gone to TRCs, and they have a smaller right-of-way that has been approved by the fire chief and fire marshal.
Could sometime, it doesn't have to be today, but perhaps I can be educated as to why we allow roads to be so narrow in these developments that if one guy parks his car illegally, the fire truck can't get down the street. I'm just trying to figure out why we do this time and time again, build these roads and these developments to save the builder some bucks on asphalt, where if I have a party and my friends show up with their pickup trucks and we park on the right-of-way, but it's the tires are off on the road, you're going to be driving through somebody's front yard to get to the house because we continuously allow these roads to be so narrow. And I think some point in time we need to address whether or not the UDO has to be changed to allow for regular streets to be put in all future developments.
Do
Is
people
is there a
apply?
minimum width that's safe for roads that are being built? I mean, are we saying that they're not building roads that are adequate in width?
Well,
Go ahead.
some of these newer townhouse subdivisions are really, there's one on the west side of town right now where, again, so I do think that those are unsafe. I agree with Mr. Alt. And
It may be legal
Right.
because the state allows you to build it, but it doesn't take, because the fire truck will fit down the road if nothing's there. But people do things on Saturday night, when they come over to have a couple of beers at the house and they park in the roadway and now you can't get through. And we can fix that. We can make it so that it happens. The roads are bigger in the future. We can't change this development, but
This is a variance? Is this, what is it, how do they get these smaller roads?
It still meets DOT requirements, but it's a smaller than, I believe, that the UDO recommends. But then if it's approved by the fire chief and the fire codes, then we can reduce it.
Sounds like we need to send code enforcement over there. I'm serious. I mean, if these roads are not wide, that's a very good point.
The
Somebody.
question is that illegal
I
parking?
mean-
If someone's parking on the street there, is that illegal? Is there anything illegal about it?
Yeah,
They're just, well, they are if their truck is, if they have a big truck and they park two tires on the roadway, yeah, I suppose it's blocking. I mean, they around here, the police do this all the time. If you're parked on the right of way and your tires are on the asphalt, you're asked to move your truck or your car someplace else. My point is that while it may be legal, I think we're setting ourselves up. You go up to, and I wish I could remember the name, you go up Robert Rourke and all those developments, like 5 homeowners associations up there. Some of those streets are absolutely way too narrow if you have people that come over. Yes, they're illegally parking, but that doesn't help you in crisis time when you're trying to get things up in that area, especially if it's a full house fire. I'm assuming the entire fire department's showing up, and that can cause a problem. It's a foreseeable risk that we have, and I'm saying that in the future, we should look at change, and not like long-term future. We should be looking at changing the UDO that says that the roads will be whatever the right number of feet is. It helps us just to stand there in those streets and just look at it, and I'm more than happy if the fire chief can tell me that he feels very comfortable with the way the streets are, then he's the subject matter expert on it. But I'm thinking you can get it down there when the street is empty, but
Training, I guess it's been about 3 or 4 weeks ago, myself, Chief Coring, Chief Thomas, and Chief Treadway were on the 101-foot platform truck, and we took it through Prices Creek. That's the largest truck that we have. And we were out, us 4 were out pumping that truck down by ADM, and we took it through Prices Creek, and we maneuvered the truck all the way through there with no issues in the afternoon. So, I mean, I don't see an issue right now. Now, of course, anybody could park anywhere. I mean, that would be something that would have to be addressed on a as-need basis or as we, respond. So, a lot of these HOAs will not allow people to do on-street parking. So that helps, some as well. I don't know if that answers your question.
well, I guess my question is, sir, I'm assuming that the fire trucks will get down there because you approved the road spray. My point is, what's the downside of asking from them from now forward that the roads be made bigger? Is there a downside to that?
Oh, no, there's no downside to it.
Okay.
I mean,
Not from an access perspective,
Right.
but there is from other perspective, from a stormwater perspective, from an impervious surface perspective, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I don't disagree with your basic point, Rich, but I mean, I think we need to be careful. I don't know that we can legislate around people doing things that are either dumb or illegal. I mean, which is kind of what to me, is sort of the bottom line of what we're talking about. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it more in the future.
Could park anywhere that could prevent our first responders from getting where they need to go. I mean, they're open season parking in Southport, wherever sometimes, and so hopefully those neighborhoods will be more amenable to parking issues and that type thing.
If I may, I would like to say that this is a low-density stormwater controlled subdivision. So they can only have 25% impervious surfaces for this project. So they're under that, and so they are using swales and discharges for infiltration on site. So they do not have to build a stormwater pond or have engineered, or it's engineered, but they don't have to have a stormwater drainage protection for the subdivision. So that's part of the reason they can't have as much impervious surface as well.
So the water table is far enough down that the water will actually be absorbed into the ground?
It will be, they have it, it will be graded, so it will drain itself into the lowlands. There's some wetlands that they're able to drain to, and it's all through DEQ, so water quality will be approving this design, so it'll be all on-site drained out, infiltrated. Yes, but yes, it will be.
I look forward to seeing that happen. Thank you.
Good discussion, and thank you, Chief, for that explanation. Any further questions or comments on Price's Creek before we go to Osprey? Okay. All right. Item 8, Osprey Landing.
Osprey Landing is requesting final plat for Phase 1 and 2 of their subdivision. So it's a 45 and a 37 lot final plat. They've completed all of their improvements. They've done the grading, all of the stormwater, and all of the streets for this project. And I can pass on anything, if any questions you have.
Okay. Any questions on Osprey Landing? Previous board members, we have had our rounds with this development, and they certainly have moved moved along. If you've driven by there, you see where the streets are in and that type of thing. They've had to do a lot of work, and they've completed a lot of work. So any questions, any comments? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, item 9 is the social media policy, and Mr. Herman will lead that discussion. And so we've had any comments on that right now? Anyone that would like to remove it, or?
I still oppose this. I think that
thought Ms.
having
Reed-
this as a policy is wrong-headed. We can deal with almost all aspects of this through our existing ethics policy, and guidelines and best practices should be part of a training manual, and we should have training manuals. But I want to read you, John, you had asked me at the last meeting some of the reasons that I'm opposed to this, and I'll read you this, because I don't speak as well as members of the Supreme Court. And I'm sorry to say that this is about the Larry Flint, Hustler magazine publisher, his defense against a defamation lawsuit brought by Jerry Falwell, a televangelist. Now, this goes back some decades, but Hustler magazine had satirized Jerry Falwell, and he took great offense at that, and it managed to get all the way to the Supreme Court. And in its decision in favor of Larry Flint and Hustler magazine, the majority decision said, at the heart of the First Amendment is the recognition of the fundamental importance of the free flow of ideas and opinions on matters of public interest and concern. The freedom to speak one's mind is not only an aspect of individual liberty and thus a good unto itself, but also is essential to the common quest for truth and the vitality of society as a whole. We have therefore been particularly vigilant to ensure that individual expression of ideas remain free from governmentally imposed sanctions.
And that's true. And I think here with our social media policy, I think it can, I think we can certainly hear the discussion from Mr. Herman, but I think part of it was just making sure that as elected officials, there are times when someone is speaking or posting or whatever, it has to be separated out that they're speaking as an individual and not as the elected official. I think that was part of it in terms of who can speak for the city. If you have 6 different aldermen speaking and saying 6 different things, then does that confuse the public? It might. So I think that's part of that policy. And then certainly the ethics that you mentioned, that, and no one wants to prohibit, free speech. And then we want to be civil in our discourse. And so, and I understand what you're saying, yeah, no, but this isn't about prohibiting anyone's speech. I think it's just some clarification on a level of the elected official, and if someone is going to speak, they are posting or speaking as unless they're specifically asked, they're speaking as a citizen. But then it's hard to separate that out. So
I believe that is either explicitly or implicitly in our ethics policy, that we make it clear how we are speaking, either as public officials and thus apparently on the behalf of the board, or as private. But I will say this, if we persist in going ahead with this, we need to do some editing, because the appeal, and this is from the public, to appeal if they've been blocked from the city's Facebook page. The appeal is to be addressed to Norwood Blanchard. I think not.
I don't want to really discuss it until we have our attorney with us, just to make sure what I'm asking.
Is there opposition to it being on the agenda? I think that's, okay, good. And Mr. Herman will lead that discussion. Okay, so, all right. Okay.
I would just like to go on the record, this is Cheyenne speaking, that there is nobody blocked on the City of Southport official Facebook page. On the record, there is nobody blocked on the City of Southport official Facebook page.
This
Thank you.
proposed policy, though, says if we ever did block somebody, they have an appeal process, and that appeal goes to Norwood Blanchard. We would have to fix that.
Brady Herman, I understand what you're saying. Yes, go to the city
I think
attorney.
I think it goes to the Supreme Court, because they already ruled on this. You're not blocking anybody unless they're screaming, terrorist comments. But if they're just saying words that you don't like because they're being mean to you, you got to accept that. And if we block it, boy, the court has been very clear about this, because if it applies to the President of the United States, I think it's going to apply to Southport.
We're blocking anybody, just like she said.
Yeah, I was just making a clarification that there is nobody blocked. I think there was just a misstatement in a sentence, so I was just clarifying that for the record. The rest of the policy can be discussed with Attorney Herman.
All right, thank you. So that'll be a good discussion. Item 10, ordinance amendments for boards, committees, commissions, chapters 2 and 13. We've discussed that earlier in our workshop, and it's going to be on the agenda. Any further questions on that? Okay, thank you. And then item 11, system development fee, utility rate study, engineer selection. Bonnie Theron?
What? I didn't.
sorry.
No, I didn't. So on item 11, and I'll bring this up at the meeting, I have a family conflict with the company, and so I will not be in part of this conversation. Obviously, will not vote or anything like that. So item 11.
So this item is, I asked Dory to add it to the agenda because we just opened up the bids, and I know how important it is for the board to review the system development fees. So we did receive one proposal, and it was from Williams Ravenel, Withers Ravenel. And so we want to award this so we can get them going on working on that particular project. So that's what this is about. So.
McGill and Associates did the last one, I believe, just
McGill?
FYI. I believe
They
McGill
did.
did the
believe,
last
They
one.
did.
yes,
They
but-
did not submit a bid this time.
Any comments, questions for the city manager? Okay, great, thank you. So, of course, we'll have our committee reports, manager's report, our staff reports will be in there, comments, and we have two closed sessions? Just one? Okay,
No, there's
one.
two.
I thought there were two,
Well, I
but
mean, there's two items for that
two
topic.
items. I apologize, two items.
Real estate.
Yeah, not related to Withers and Ravenel. And, but we have one closed session. Yes, thank you. And, all right, so any, obviously no questions on that until we get to the, we're just letting you know that we have two items and one for our closed session. All right, we'll go with board comments. Alderman Allen, any comments? Okay. Alderman Davis, glad you're here. Alderman Alt?
No, sir.
Alderman Lombardi?
I'm just glad, especially with code enforcement, that we're moving ahead and not looking back at everything. And I think, Bonnie, I thank you for arranging that. I think you were instrumental. And that's it.
Excellent, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Only question is, where are we with the noise ordinance?
They were going to present it today, and I asked them questions of things that you had brought up at the last workshop that had not been addressed. So I said, take it off until it's addressed, because we need that appeal process and a couple of things. So it'll be on for your next agenda.
Alderman Carroll?
All right, I've got two things. The sweeper was out at like 8:59, and I know that that's due to complaints, but they're not being productive at 9 o'clock sweeping our streets. So that really upsets me. We spent a lot of money to buy that, and it's really not getting used, which I guess goes back to the noise ordinance a little bit. The other thing is, I really like having multiple meetings, but there is, sorry, Randy. Sorry, Randy. There was a little bit of sarcasm in it, but not really. I mean, I'm getting, however, there is a significant amount of redundancy that I think is not efficient. We are having meetings about the same topic. We've talked social media so many times. I know exactly what Lo's going to say. I didn't know she was going to read somebody else's words today, but I know the conversation. So, and then that gets missed at the table when we actually sit in front of people who show up. We have two citizens here today. I don't know. I don't know if there's a solution to that, to the multiple meetings and then stuff getting missed when we're actually at the table. You know, we're voting on things and the public's not necessarily hearing the conversation that was had the week before. So
It's probably incumbent on us to do a better job of introducing items and explaining why we as individual aldermen are voting, the way we are.
Implying I didn't change anybody's mind about social media.
My thing is, I thought the purpose of these meetings around the agenda was if we had a question that to prepare for the other meeting. Like, as an example, ask Oakton asking for our engineer to be there just so we can be clear about something, but not debating the merits of it here necessarily, but asking if we've got questions, having those pieces of the puzzle, or if we need clarification, like we don't understand something.
And it's also, it's a workshop. It's a workshop that we have the, agenda review, and it may seem redundant at times, but for example, the presentation from the code enforcement, I think that was very important and a very good conversation today, and that's something we can do at a workshop, and I think that's the purpose of this, and I understand that these meetings, we had one Monday and we're having it again, but that's because of the budget. Budget season is a busy time, so, and we have another meeting Wednesday and then a meeting Thursday, so but we're through budget season, I would imagine, city manager, we would have a less robust time in terms of extra meetings. But I think it's helpful. Alderman Allen had recommended and I think they'll be helpful, and we'll make them more efficient. And if we find that they're not helpful at all, then we don't have to do them. But I think the workshop aspect and then the review the agenda for the next meeting, I think is helpful. And it gives the board a chance to be together. The citizens are here. Our city staff is here. And I think that it allows preparation. It shows our citizens we're being prepared. We're being proactive in every aspect of city government. And it's a public health approach, prevention, proactiveness. And it gives you a chance to be together because, the open meeting policy and that type thing. So hopefully once budget season is through, there won't be as many. But I think these workshops are helpful, and I enjoy being with all of you and the staff during this time.
Yeah, excuse me. The number of meetings is not what concerns me. It's that we're missing information at the table. Mr. Curry would be a valuable asset to be at our regular Board of Aldermen meeting. It would have added to the education. We would have had an open conversation where the community would have actually heard what the plan is and why we're doing this. They don't know today. And the idea that on Thursday they're not going to know any more than they do, because they didn't hear it. They didn't see him. He was fantastic.
I actually spoke to him yesterday. He asked if he needed to attend the regular board meetings. I told him I didn't think it was appropriate for him to come so soon since they just started, to give it some time for him to get in. We wanted to introduce him to the board first and get him started around the community. We're actually going to put out a press release later with the information to the public, and then I told him maybe at the June meeting he would be asked to come to that board meeting to be available for questions with the public as well.
But what I didn't want to have happen was he starts work today and you guys are going, who the heck is this person driving the city car around? So that's why I had him here. But for me, the workshops are great as a city manager because I get to introduce topics to get you thinking about things. So, which sometimes I've overloaded you doing that. And I know what you're saying, Robert, that sometimes it seems redundant that when we get, say, reviewing the agenda, we're talking about the same thing the next week, and it's like Groundhog Day. Yeah. Yes. And doesn't even know. Right. So I think it's just we're going to grow through this together and learn how to do it better. But for me, it's great.
Point is good that we need to make sure that if we do have an argument, not an argument, but a conversation at the table here, that carries over to the actual meeting so that people understand why are they voting the way they're voting? Why are they saying no to an administrative approval, or whatever it may be? I
hope that takes place regardless on every vote. in that regard, because there is discussion before there is the final vote on every topic. So yeah, definitely that needs to occur. Anyone else? Well, I think it was a very productive meeting. I enjoyed being with all of you today, and thank you for these discussions. Thank you, City Manager, for setting all this up. City staff, thank you for being here. Chiefs, thank you for being here. Our police and fire here today, and our citizens, thank you. Anything else before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Okay, motion to adjourn. Okay, Alderman Allen and Alderman Davis, and welcome back, Alderman Davis. Glad things went well. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Yes, you did.